everybody. So I'm Tim Dallinger from Social Care Consultants. I suppose before I say it like it is, give you a little bit of background. So I started as a care provider in 1987. It was on a Friday evening, and my wife at the time, the lady's name was Mavis, she brought two people with a learning disability home with her. You might think, how does that happen? Well, they were in what was then called adult family placements, now called shared lives, and it had broken down. And her job as a social worker was to find them somewhere effectively to live. And it was a Friday, and they were in our office in the local authority building, and there was nowhere for them to go. So in the 1980s, if you were a social worker, you could sort of take them home for the weekend because there was nowhere else, there was no respite care. And we became the carers for Peter and for Linda. Now, Peter was part of my life from 1987 till he passed away in 2001. And Linda was part of my life from 1987 till she passed away in 2003. And that was sort of my introduction to social care. After a couple of years of being their carers, it was going really well. And we discovered that if we made a small care home, we'd actually get paid 3 times as much, and she could give up work and we'd run a small care home. In those days, you didn't need to be registered to run a care home for less than 3 people. That was fine. But in 1990, the law changed and you needed to be registered. So eventually we got registered. And ultimately, we ended up with 4 services for people with learning disabilities. People, some of them that had lived for many years, and I mean decades, in one case, 44 years, in long-stay institutions. And then in 2001, my wife got sick. She got cancer, and I gave up my career. I was working in a university at the time to care for her and to run our business. And then 10 days before Christmas in 2001, she passed away, and I became a full-time care provider. So I was, because my services were in Wales, I was the responsible individual, the equivalent of the nominated individual, but with much more responsibility in Wales. At one point, I was the registered manager of all 4 services, and I actually did run a service for 3 people, registered care home, that did not have 24-hour staffing and did not have staff on duty at night, which I guess is a bit unusual. But 2001, I'm 35, I look after all of these people, I've got a staff team of about 20. And I thought, well, do I really want to do this? Because if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it really well. And I'm going to care for these people and support them till they don't need me any longer. And you know what that means, don't you? They move on to different placements or they pass away. And I stopped being a care provider in 2020 when the last of the people that I supported moved on to a different provider as part of a managed process. So gradually we got smaller and smaller and smaller. In about 2004, I started to train my own staff, discovered I had a passion for training and consultancy. And 2008, I formed my company, Social Care Consultants. And now I do training and consultancy for the care sector. Deliver training for lots of local authorities and providers. One of the things is outcome-focused care planning, but lots of other stuff, regulatory compliance, medication, stuff like that. And I do compliance consultancy, but I don't do turnaround. I help providers get it right before it's gone wrong. And that's for 2 reasons, one of which is there is only one of me. There are no team of consultants. And if a service needs support today, I'm just not available for months. And also, I think that the people that have the care and support, they have the right for providers to get it right. So when I do compliance audits. Some people call them mock inspection, but I don't really like that term because how can it be a mock inspection? It's a misnomer. So I do compliance audits. And one of the things I often find that needs to be improved is care planning, risk management, and especially how we design outcomes, how we involve people in their care and their care planning process, and how we measure and monitor outcomes. So when Louis said he was going to put this conference on, I got in touch and said, Louis, do you want a speaker? Because I'd love to talk about this, because it's an area that is important, not just from a compliance perspective, not just to satisfy a regulator like CQC or CIW or Care Inspectorate. It matters to the people we support. So what I'd like to cover is the foundations of what an outcome actually is, how we can work with people to focus on what matters to them. I'll come back to that in a moment. How we can really define those outcomes, how we can link that into whatever care planning system that's used at the time. I'd like to look at how we can link that to not just care planning, but to reviews and risk management. And I'd like to finish off by how we can monitor outcomes. And by monitoring, I mean on an everyday basis, and how we can measure outcomes. And measuring of outcomes is absolutely essential. And I was speaking to a provider recently, and one of the things they said to me is, we're getting a lot of pressure from local authorities and commissioners. And we're getting pressure about the commissioned hours. And they're asking us for 3, 6, 9, 12 months worth of actual care records, because they want to look at those care records to see how we are using commissioned hours, especially one-to-one hours. And of course, it's not really a hidden agenda. There is very much an agenda. If you're not using the hours and you're not showing absolutely that you are delivering outcomes, the person's going to lose those hours, those support hours that they really need to enhance their life, their well-being. And this is happening all over the place because local authority social services departments are very much cash strapped. So I'd like to talk a little bit about how we can actually evidence that we're using those hours for benefit to achieve outcomes. So one of the things that's really important is that when outcomes are written, and when they're written in care and support plans, they are written in a way that is measurable. How can we judge how well we've met this outcome? And in order to do that, the outcome's got to be super specific. So you might think, why have I only put one PowerPoint slide? There are some more, so I'm going to change the slides now. And don't think, oh no, this is going to be death by PowerPoint because Ian didn't use any PowerPoint slides. There are only 12 PowerPoint slides, one of which is the introduction and one of which has got my contact details on. So, there's 10 slides. And I'm going to do those 10 slides in the next 35 minutes. It's about 3 minutes per slide, isn't it? So let's start with the foundation. What is an outcome? Now, that seems really simple because an outcome is the end result. But in social care terms, it's the difference that we make. It's how we've made a positive difference to a person's life. It is not the task we carry out. And one of the things I often find that isn't great about the way care plans are written, and usually care plans are structured in 3 sections, aren't they? The need, the outcome, the actions. Sometimes it's called different things, but that's the gist of it. The need, that's describing the person in that area. The outcome, the end result. The actions, how we make the outcome happen. And one of the things that's often wrong is that information is in the wrong section. So you get bits of need stuck in the outcomes, you get outcomes stuck in the need, and both of those stuck in the actions. It's all a bit wishy-washy. So outcome is the difference. Now, there's a couple of types of outcomes. There's the maintenance outcome, and that is exactly what I say it is. We are going to maintain. Now, if someone has a condition which means that their well-being is deteriorating, their level of independence is diminishing, a maintenance outcome is about what do we do to stop that happening, or what do we do to slow it down. So for example, if someone is living in supported living, they don't have 24-hour support. They have floating support. They have 6 hours a day, say. And they do loads of things independently. Some of their outcomes are going to be maintenance outcomes, aren't they? So, for example, if they've got a tenancy, and that tenancy requires them to pay their rent on time, to pay their bills, to keep their property in an appropriate state, their outcomes could be to maintain those things. They're maintenance outcomes. And the next type of outcome is a change outcome. And a change outcome is where we're going to make an improvement. We're going to make a positive difference. So, for example, if you've got someone living in a supported living setting and they've got 24-hour staff support, but they're doing really well and they really want a place of their own. But in order to have a place of their own, they need to be able to manage their own medication and all the bits that go with that. They're recognizing that you need to order, making sure you've ordered on time, collected it, looking after it properly, storing it, know which one to take when. So that will result in a number of change outcomes. How do we take them from the level of support that they need today to a level of support where they can do that thing completely independently? So that's a change outcome. But ultimately, outcome is the difference that we make to the person's life. The output, though, it often gets confused, output and outcome. The output is what we've done, the hours delivered, the visits, the tasks. So, for example, we supported the person to cook a meal. I mean, that's a rubbish record, isn't it? I mean, I hope you're thinking, I hope my team would never write that. I mean, you can't just write support. What does that mean? And if we supported the person, in reality, that means the care and support staff did it. Output describes the activity of the service, or on the other hand, an outcome. What changed for the person? Like the examples I've given you, are they more independent? Have they got more choice? What's their state of well-being? So if they have some, for example, some mental health needs, how well are they being managed? How well are they managing it? What's their state of well-being? So a good record that they confidently prepared meals, they enjoy and eat well. And as you'll hear me say a number of times in the next 30 minutes, they've got to be what matters to the person. They've got to mean something to the person. They've got to be defined by the individual. And when I say the person, I mean the person at the centre of the care, or if they are unable to be involved, who is acting as their voice? Now, as I said to you, I ran services in Wales, and we have in Wales different legislation than in England. And we have a different care law. We don't have the Care Act 2014, we have the Social Services and the Wellbeing Act 2014, which is pretty much the same thing. But that has some core principles. And one of those core principles I really, really like, and that is that people should have voice and control. And I think that all services should. I think all services should put that as their vision and strategy to be actually. Do people have a voice? And that voice should be their own voice. And if it can't be their own voice, for example, due to lack of capacity for that decision or risk, who is acting on their behalf? Who is speaking for them? And that may be a family member, or it could be an advocate. And also people need to have control, because we all have control over our lives. And you might think, oh, the state controls us, but no, it doesn't. We have control over our lives. The clothes that you are wearing today, you chose them. The food that you've eaten, you chose it. The fact that you are here, that was control. Whether you are listening to me or doing something else in the background, that's a choice you made. You had control. So why do we need to change? You might be thinking now, well, I don't need to change. We do this already. But I see lots of care providers. I see lots of their care plans, and I can tell you the sector does need to change. Outcomes matter because the support we provide is about life, not just providing care and support. Care is what was provided in those long stay institutions where people like those I used to support in the last century lived. Today, it's life. It's about giving them a good life, not just fed, watered, and toileted. And that's another bugbear of mine, the way we make care records. Fed, watered, toileted. That's what it looks like. Where's their life? Where's their involvement? What worked? What didn't work? How did you overcome challenges? So when I read care records, care notes, I want to see the person jumping out of those care notes. I don't really want to know what your staff team did. I don't really want your care worker's diary. I don't want to know that Fred was asleep when the carer came on shift. I want to know that Fred had a lie-in today. I don't want to know that Fred was supported to make lunch. I want to know how that happened. What did Fred do? What worked? What didn't work? What support was provided? Was Fred happy with his lunch choice? Was he happy? Was he pleased that he made lunch? Did he have a big smile on his face? That's what I want to jump out of care records. So outcomes are about life, not care. It's about promoting dignity and independence, because dignity is how we feel about ourselves. How dignified must it be to have someone provide care for you? And some of us have had that experience when, for example, we've needed healthcare. How do you feel about that? How do you feel about it when somebody needs to do personal care on you? How very dignified is it? What must it be like to have to take somebody into the toilet with you? What must it be like that when you have a poo, someone's got to prompt you about how to wipe your bum properly? So dignity lives here in our heads. But outcomes also about maximising people's independence. And often I find that care and support workers are really good at doing that, but really poor at documenting it. It's about better well-being, and not just physical well-being, but also emotional well-being. Because if you feel better about your life, then that has a consequential effect on your physiological well-being, but also you're easier to support. You're more cooperative. Just think about yourselves for a moment. What are you like if you're a bit unwell? Are you well-tempered or are you a bit grumpy? Maybe you're a bit grumpy, hey? Of course, you're all going to say, no, I'm sweetness and light when I'm unwell. Yeah, right. Life ain't like that. Outcomes are about the evidence of the impact. Regulators, commissioners, families, people want proof that you've delivered value for money, bang for the buck. Proof that the support you provided changes lives, not just a record of activity. That's where outcomes comes in. And it's the most powerful of resources, because if we do this well, and just think about those of you that are registered with CQC, trying to get your head around the quality statements before they disappear off into the yonder. But look about that quality statement that's in the responsive key question. Equity in access, followed by equity in outcomes and experience. And what's all that about? It's about this. It's about how did we support the people where there are barriers to their support? How did we identify those barriers, link them to outcomes, and address them in a planned way? One of the providers I work with, they supported a young person with complex learning disabilities and autism. And that person needed urgent dental treatment. But there was no way he was going to go to the dentist. No way in a million years. So they worked with the dentist, they worked with health, and over 6 months, they did effectively long-term progressive desensitization, which started with them putting him in the car. He's quite happy to go in the car, and they go and drive past the dentist. Not stop, not go in, but they just get him familiar with drive into the dentist. Then they'd go and park in the car park near the dentist loads of times. Then they'd go in their waiting room and do that loads of times. And eventually he went in the dentist and he had his teeth examined, but then he needed extractions. So then they had to start the process again. But his dentist arranged that they would do the extraction in the dental hospital. That took a lot of working out, but then there were lots of visits to the hospital car park, walking up to the place in the hospital where the treatment would be done. And eventually, 6, 7 months later, he's booked in, goes to the hospital, he has the general anaesthetic, he has his teeth sorted out. I think that's outstanding. And I know we don't do this for the rating when you do, but that's outstanding, isn't it? Because you've identified a barrier to equity to access, incorporated into care planning, risk management and outcomes, and then monitored, measured and achieved. So let's look at why care services fail on outcomes. Bit of honesty now. It's time and task, isn't it? Local authorities say they do outcome-focused commissioning. Yeah, it's in the tender documents. In reality, what do they monitor? Time and task. How do we plan care? Time and task. Even some of the digital systems that are in use, set up, time and task. And in some services, it's very task orientated. It fails because we don't measure the activity. We count things instead of looking at what changed. We count. We record that the person's had breakfast. That should just be a given. What we want to see is how much involved were they in their breakfast? Did they enjoy their breakfast? Did they enjoy the process of making their breakfast? Did you enjoy your breakfast today? There's an awful lot of doing for, not with. And mainly that's because either we haven't trained our workers well, and we're not supervising them well, or we're a little bit risk averse. I mean, why are the people you support, why are they not making themselves a cup of coffee? You're going to say, it's too risky, hot water and stuff like that. Really though? Because I think the real reason is they're going to slop it everywhere and someone will have to clean it up. So let's look at how we can let people do it. I love it when I go to visit services. And I love it when the people who live there show me around. I love it when they make me a cuppa. That's great. It's their house. It's great. Man, I've had that experience this week, actually. I visited a few services this week. And in one of those services, one of the people that lived there said, "Oi, you, come here. Where are we going? I'm going to show you around." It's great. I had such a big smile on my face. I was a bit worried, though, that she was going to ask me to fix some of the things that were wrong in her bedroom. She didn't, thankfully, but, you know, I couldn't fix them anyhow. Care plans, often care plans are quite good when they're first created. You know, you're all keen, aren't you, then? Care plans and risk assessments, they're okay sometimes when they're first created. But then what happens, you know, they get reviewed, but they don't really get reviewed very well. And they sort of gather electronic dust. And sometimes you get bits of care plans that are contradictory to other bits. That happens a lot. Where's the person's voice? Because everybody must have a voice. And if it can't be their voice, and in order for it to be their voice, the first thing we've got to be dealing with is making it accessible. One of the things I will always ask on an audit is, how do you make care plans accessible to people? I've read this person's care plan. It says that they don't use the spoken word as a means of communication. Can they understand some words? Yeah, well, it doesn't say that in their care plan. Can they read? No. So why have you given them an easy read care plan if they can't read? But I see that when you did the transition plan, you used social stories. Did that work? They said, yeah, that worked. So why haven't you got a social story accessible format support plan for them? And then you see people's pennies dropping. What a good idea. It is a good idea, isn't it? So let's make care planning accessible. It fails because there's not enough time. We need to think about how long things take. We need to think about all of the components of support. And it isn't just the providing of the support. There's the appropriate documentation of the support. And remember, records need to be made contemporaneously, which means at the time of delivery. So, when I'm auditing services, usually digital systems, it gets to about this time, 5 to 11-ish. Let's look at care records have been made today. Because, person's up about, I can see them. They've had breakfast, I've seen them at breakfast. No records. Why not? Oh, the staff will do it after lunch. Oh, contemporaneous. Now, this is slightly controversial. I think we do care planning the wrong way. I think we start with needs. And why do we start with needs? Because that's the way software is written. That's the way care plans are designed. I think we need to start with outcomes. When we start with the need, quite often it's deficit-based care planning. It's about what the person can't do. It's about seeing the person as a problem that needs to be managed. And Big Ian talked a little bit about that, didn't he? Don't see people as problems, see them as people. It reduces the person to a diagnosis. Tim has a learning disability. This means Tim is unable to. It's deficit-based. But if you start with the outcomes, but that's about the person. It's about their life. It puts them at the center and it lets them lead the process. And when I say the person, I mean the person you support. And if there's a real, genuine reason why that cannot be them involved, mental capacity reason, for example, I need an MCA for that, or risk, you need a risk assessment for that. Who is acting for them? And we've got an awful long way as a sector to educate people's families about their role. Ask people, like I will ask you now, what does a good life look like for you? And I'd love to see in care plans the answer to that question. A good life for name of person means this happening. Answer it for yourself. Now, what is a good life for you? What are the things that make your life good? That changes though, doesn't it? I mean, in a little over a month, 2 months, I'm going to be 60. No, I don't like it. Yeah, right. What a good life looks like for me as a nearly 60-year-old was very different than what a good life looked like for me as a 30-year-old, which, to be honest, didn't seem that long ago. One of the things that matters to me now, there are lots of things that matter to me. One of the things that matters, and it sounds really pretentious and big-headed, I want to add value to the society that I live in and the sector that I work in, which mainly is why I'm doing stuff like this, and also why I post profusely on social media, just to make people think differently and to help people improve. That's just the only thing, but that's part of who I am. And it's a bit like the old L'Oreal advert. I want to have been worth it. Worth what? Worth the time I have on earth. So that's something that matters to me. But I would never have said that 30 years ago. Never at all. The question that changes everything. What is that question? It's not what's the matter with you. It's what matters to you. What matters most to you? And if I were to ask all of you that, and I wish I could ask you that, you know what the majority of you will say? Family. That's what you'll say. Family. And for some of you, that's the only thing, because what you do, how you earn money, what you do with it, it's to provide for yourself and your family. Build care plans around what matters to people, not around what's the matter with them. For me, my healthcare, yeah, it's on the list. It's not top. Personal care, it's on the list. It's below health. What matters most to me? It's literally being able to provide for my family and my dogs. They're quite important. They're more important than some of my family. That's the most important question we can ask. It shifts the power from the professional to the person. And that's what person-led support is about. It's relinquishing the power that we have and giving it to the most important person. And remember, when I say person, I mean the person you support, or if they can't be involved, the people who are acting for them. And they really, really must act for them. It's about what gives life meaning, relationships, routine, ambitions. What gives your life meaning? I've shared a little bit about what gives my life meaning. It reveals goals that a needs assessment never would. You know, you can build an entire care plan around what matters most. I'll share that with a real story. I've got time to do this. So one of the gentlemen I supported, and I supported this chap for 27 years, and I was really sad when I heard that he died, because other than people I was related to, he's the person I've known for the longest. This is someone I started to support when he was a 45-year-old. He had Down syndrome, and he was 74 when he passed away. So that's quite a long time, isn't it? And do you know what mattered most to him? What mattered most to him was heartbeat. Not his heartbeat, but Heartbeat, the TV program. And you know, even as I say heartbeat, I can hear the theme tune in my head. And yeah, he had a little bit of OCD, he was obsessive, and heartbeat was the most important thing to him. Nothing else was happening till Heartbeat was on TV. But of course, Heartbeat wasn't on TV every day. So we had an awful lot of videos. And I mean videos when they were video cassettes. And he had one of those, like, remember those little square tellies with the slot to put the video in? And he was quite heavy-handed, so often the videos would break. We had lots of videos. And sometimes he'd break the TV. So when people started getting flat screen TVs, we would always be saying to people, if you're getting rid of your big square TVs, can you give us your old ones? We had lots of spare ones. And we built a care plan around Heartbeat. And that's making it person-centered and person-led. And yes, we did all of the other stuff, you know, personal care, food prep, all of that stuff. But the thing that mattered most to him was Heartbeat. We need to ask people what matters to them again and again in accessible ways, because it changes. It really does change. Like I've said to you, what matters to me as a 59-year-old is different than as a 30-year-old. When we make it personal, we've got to go beyond that standard list of care tasks. One size fits all care plan templates produce almost identical care plans for different people. Sometimes I see in services care plans that have clearly been copied and pasted from one individual to another. Notice the deliberate choice of words, from one individual to another. They're not individual. And sometimes it gets the gender wrong. And sometimes it's the wrong name. You've added that. Standard care plan, personalised care plan. The difference. Standard generic routines, copied and pasted, describes the task, not the aspiration. Written once, fixed in place. If care and support plans are not up to date, you're failing the person and you're breaching, in a CQC registered service, you're breaching Reg 9, person-centred care. If it was CIW, Reg 15, personal plans, breached. We use language the person might not recognise. If it's personalised, it's built around the person. It's written in their voice in an accessible format. It describes what a good life looks like to them. It changes, it's flexible. And there's a debate, isn't there? Do you make it person-centred by putting it as I? My personal view is you don't. So should we put I or should we put name? This is how I've always dealt with this. If the person was involved and they wanted it to say I, put it as I. If they were involved and they wanted their name, put their name. But if they're not involved, how can you put I? I think you need to put their name. That's my personal view. And that's what I would do if I were a care provider again. We need to embrace risk as part of life. Our goal for the people we support is not a life without risk. It's embracing risk, the right risk well supported. We have the right to take risks. We take them all the time. It's how we learn. We quite like the buzz. That's positive risk taking, isn't it? What's the benefits? Why can't they make a cup of tea? It's too risky. What's the benefit? And how can we mitigate the risk without overprotecting them? Because not letting them make a cup of tea is overprotection. How can we break that down and let them do what they can do? And apply the MCA to that. Assume capacity till you've got evidence. Assume they can make decisions about making a cup of tea till you've got evidence. Be proportionate. Identify the risk with the person. In CQC regulated services, you've got that quality statement, haven't you, that links to Reg 12, involving people to manage risk. So many not so great inspection reports at the moment say there was no evidence to show that people had been involved in assessing and mitigating the risks associated with their care. People, the person you support, or those acting for them. Assess. I like to assess risk with scores, and I like to assess risks with scores before and after control measures. Mitigate. What do we do to make it less likely? So I would like to do risk assessments by assessing severity or impact, same thing, and likelihood, and then either add or multiply to get a risk score, and then mitigation measures to make it less likely, and then score again. And in the majority of cases, not all, but the majority of cases, you can't reduce the severity or the impact. And the analogy I often use is you can't be any less dead. You can just be less likely to be dead. There are some circumstances where you can reduce the impact as well, but that's not normal. And manage and review. And one of the things that goes wrong with risk assessments is that they're done, they're okay, and they correlate with the care plan. But when the care plan is reviewed, nobody remembers to review the risk assessments. Or the risk changes, someone fiddles with the risk assessment, and they don't go back and correlate with the care plan. And something that used to be dovetailed together becomes separated. The person must be involved at every step. Decisions proportionate, agreed, documented. So a little bit about monitoring and measuring. Outcome monitoring, where care records come in. That's where it's so important that how we record the involvement of the person. What did they say? What did they do? What did they choose? What did they achieve? What worked? What didn't work? What's changing? Record outcome, not just task. Record involvement, not just what you did. And it's the old adage, isn't it? If it's not recorded, it didn't happen. And don't think you can record that just by taking a photograph. Because at the moment, it's incredibly difficult to analyze a photograph because photographs can be interpreted in different ways. But they've got to be personal, they've got to be factual, strength-based. And that's how we monitor outcomes on a day-to-day basis. We measure outcomes, and I would do this at reviews. And what's the point of the review? Well, in a way, it's to make sure the person's care and support plan is up to date. But mostly it's about how have we moved closer to the global outcome, which is giving them the life that they want. They've got to be regular. There's no set frequency in England. There is in Wales, at least every 3 months. But we've got it. When we do that review, we've got to use the records, the evidence, and we've got to involve the person. And we've got to reset. The process is simple. Set an outcome, provide the support, document it, review, repeat. And I'm due to finish at 11:10. So we've got a couple of minutes if people have got questions. This is me. I think I'm in a care home when I took that photograph, actually. Care home selfie, not professional headshot, but it is me. If you don't know already, I do blog on LinkedIn at 6 o'clock every morning. I think today's might actually have been about care plans. That's apt, isn't it? I've also got a Facebook group in Social Care Consultants, which I only ever use to give away free tools and tips. It's over 300 free documents in the files section there. So I am sort of done. If there are any questions.
I'm going to jump in with a few, if that's okay, Tim. We've had a few. I just want to highlight Tim is the wealth and value of free stuff that Tim gives away is unprecedented. Now, some people will give away free stuff and you can tell that they spent about 34 seconds on it, and it's just a ploy to sell you something. Tim provides you with like documents that are like 40 pages long that are incredibly valuable and built on user experience. So please, if you're not connected with Tim on LinkedIn and all the others, please do, because I'll be honest, Tim, I've nicked your stuff before. I've always said it's done by Tim. Here's his details. But there's so much value in the stuff that Tim shares, and thank you so much for today.
You're gonna have me blushing now, sir.